Malcolm and Marie is the latest Netflix film to hit the streaming service. This movie stars Zendaya and John David Washington only. This movie is about a film director, played by John David Washington, coming home after the premiere of his latest big film with his girlfriend, played by Zendaya, and he's really jazzed up, he's really excited, because he just got home from an after party where people were saying he made something great, critics are gonna love this, and then as the movie goes on, he and his girlfriend have conversations, some enjoyous conversations, and then some not so enjoyable conversations, and while they're talking with each other, these two characters kind of realize their places in the world and their current status of their relationship. That's all I can really say without giving away too much. I was really into this movie because, for one, this was made during COVID, but it was not a COVID movie. This was pretty much just Sam Levinson and Zendaya were like, we should work together while we can't work on Euphoria right now. You know, we can give certain crew members jobs while also keeping it kind of tight, so as to make sure everyone is healthy and not getting each other's sick. One thing they like to say is that Zendaya did her own hair for a lot of it. And Sam Levinson came up with this premise, and Zendaya and John David Washington liked it enough to work on it. So I was very excited to see what this movie would end up being. I'm a big fan of the two actors involved, and also during COVID quarantining, I actually caught up with the show Euphoria. So I'm a big fan of that show now, and I'm looking forward to the next season, whenever that is. And I was really excited to see what Sam Levinson could do with this, because this is a much different thing than Euphoria. I have not seen his movie Assassination Nation. I know some people are like, you either love it or you kind of hate it, and I just have not seen that movie, but I know that some of the critical reception he got from that movie influenced certain parts of John David Washington's monologues in this. And that's really a way you can view this movie, is that these two characters, Malcolm and Marie, represent two sides of Sam Levinson's brain. You can kind of tell as the movie goes on that it's a lot of, like, for lack of a better term, self-therapy, basically just talking out certain things that are going on in his head, but putting them in these characters. And in a lot of cases where it can just come across as kind of obvious or maybe a bit shallow, I thought they did a really great job with it with these two characters, because as soon as the movie opens, you're already kind of intrigued, like, okay, what's going on? Because he's really happy and she's kind of, not right now. She's definitely not feeling the vibe that he's giving off right now, so what's going on? So immediately I'm drawn to these two characters, wondering what's the dynamic here and what's happening. Is something too bad, or is it something that they just need to work out and no one's talking? What's going on? I was immediately attracted to these two characters. And as the movie goes on, I really found myself getting invested with this relationship, constantly flipping, like, should these two even be together, or should they? Because it seems like maybe they're bringing the best out of each other, but right here it seems like they're only bringing out the worst. So it's kind of like a constant flip-flop. So I found this movie very riveting, not just because the actors are great, which they are, I'll get to that in a second, but because I found these characters just wondering what's going to happen to them, who's ultimately right in this situation, because at least one of them has to be right. They can both have good points, but I think at the end of the day, one of them might be overstepping. And constantly going back to the should they be together or should they not be, because that really is a thing in a lot of relationships. You can argue, but at the end of the day, that isn't just the end of the relationship, like, oh, we're arguing, time to end this. It really does depend on the context of everything, as Zendaya, I think, even mentions in this movie, this is the worst argument of our entire lives right here, or the worst argument of our relationship right here. Like, they've never had anything this awful before. So there is that point of, like, could this be leading to a unhappy ending, like a breakup thing, or is this just another thing that is rougher because more emotions are involved? But ultimately they have to talk through it. And these two actors carry it extremely well. This is the best I've ever seen of John David Washington. I'm just gonna say it. He is terrific in this movie. Because as his character Malcolm, you can feel his passion for the movies and being a filmmaker and wanting to be out there and be an important figure. You can feel that kind of, that arrogance, but he plays it off super cool. Like, he's got that cool, arrogant kind of vibe going on with his personality, and you can ultimately read into that, like, exactly what his character is. And it makes sense why he says certain things and goes on really long rants about something in particular that he's really passionate about, even when certain things about it might not be completely correct. Because that is the thing that I noticed, that there's certain things that Malcolm has said in this movie that people have kind of taken as, like, oh, this is bad, why would you put this in the movie, oh my gosh. But ultimately, I feel like people kind of miss the point that like, that's part of his character, and ultimately Zendaya is going to come back and kind of counter exactly what he's trying to say. I will say that his big speech about film critics, although it's exciting to watch because he's going for it. It's just kind of a non-stop monologue with him, and it's incredible to watch him perform it. But it is it's the only scene in the movie that I would say felt like it was Sam Levinson just like word vomiting, you know, his grievances and his frustrations. And I get why it's there, but ultimately I really enjoy this movie because these two characters are going back and forth, and this scene is just about him word vomiting. And even after he goes on the rant, and he even kind of makes a joke about how winded he is doing it, like, "Ooh, I'm tired," you know. Even after that, and Zendaya is finally allowed to kind of counter certain things he said, she doesn't really counter all of it because he says a lot. She kind of counters something that it's important, but it feels like, you know, there's so much more that I wish that they had a conversation about. And it seems like she's only responding to not the biggest things. Ultimately, what she does say does progress the narrative and grows the characters more, so that's ultimately what's important. But that's just the one scene that sticks out as like, man, I wish there was just a bit more back and forth, because that's what I was loving about everything else about this movie. There are other really long monologues in this movie, but it's kind of, script writing wise goes, it's kind of at that point where you would expect it, like, okay, yeah, this is a part where the other one would shut up for a bit and they would just go off. But in this case, it was just like I'm not really feeling this scene. Not really because of John David Washington or really the monologue itself, just I wish there was just a bit more of a response to stuff he was saying other than just this one point, it feels like. And then on the other end, you have Zendaya, who is absolutely incredible in this movie. Her monologues are all top tier. She's wonderful as this character who has a lot more baggage than you would expect, and it all leads into exactly why she's feeling a certain way, not just about herself, but about her relationship with Malcolm. It's really great, and I'm really surprised. I know the Oscars push their eligibility for like end of February, and then after that, no more movies qualify, and that's why Judas and the Black Messiah is eligible for certain awards, because it's not being released till this Friday. And it didn't have a limited release in 2020, but it's eligible for Golden Globes and SAGs. I'm surprised that Zendaya hasn't gotten a nomination anywhere else, like SAG-wise or Golden Globes-wise. I don't know if she'll be nominated for an Oscar, but I'm just really surprised because she's incredible in this movie. Like, ever since she's left those Disney Channel days doing those Spider-Man movies, The Greatest Showman, then Euphoria, and now this, you know, she's at the top of her game. She's doing incredible work. And this is my favorite performance of hers so far. I know some people have critiqued that some of the arguing, it gets repetitive after a while. I wish this movie was shorter. Honestly, I didn't really see that. I thought they did a really great job of making each argument be about kind of the same thing, but there's new details added, you know, like there's now a new point added into the mix. So ultimately, they're still arguing over the same thing they're kind of arguing about in the beginning, but now it's evolved and it's changed into something bigger. And that's what I found really interesting and exciting about this movie, seeing these characters find new ways to pick at each other about the same thing, but now I've got the upper hand as far as the argument goes, or I've got it back. I will say there is a couple things they do to try to elongate the movie that I wasn't really a fan of. I was like, okay, I'm not really sure why you're doing it like this. And then there's also moments, as much as I really love John David Washington in this movie, it felt like his performance was just a little off as far as his line delivery goes. This movie is like a bottle film, like not like a thriller though, but like a dramatic bottle film, where there's not really a whole lot else to really talk about. It's really strictly defined by these two actors and some of the filmmaking, which the black and white looks gorgeous. They did a really great job with that. And the score by Labyrinth is terrific. So certain moments when John David Washington's line delivery is a little off stand out just a bit more because the movie is so contained. Like there's a whole scene where he's freaking out about a review that came out and he can't read it unless he gets his wallet, and he's screaming like, "Where's my wallet?" But I don't know if he was on the right wavelength for a scene like that. And there's a moment also where he's kind of like heavy breathing, and it's like, I don't know how to feel about the way you're doing this right now. But ultimately, I really did enjoy Malcolm and Marie. I can see some people not being into it because it is a movie that is a lot of arguing, a lot of two people having intense conversations with each other. I totally get that. But I was completely riveted by this relationship and wondering how it was going to go, and seeing these two actors perform these really long monologues, but see them go on and really feel their characters out. It was really good to see that. I'm gonna give Malcolm and Marie a B+. I really did enjoy this movie. I'm surprised there's no more award talk for John David Washington or Zendaya, because I think they absolutely kind of deserve it. They're incredible in this movie, especially Zendaya. I can't wait to see Euphoria Season 2, but this might be my favorite performance of hers over Rue, because I think there's so much more intensity in Marie that is so much more present. It's a really good movie. But if you've seen Malcolm and Marie, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.